Let's get to today's subject. It's not part of a series. Maybe we'll start the next series soon. But as the title says, the greatest Jewish holiday. The greatest Jewish holiday. Now, most times, nowadays, when you see great, amazing, you have to what the kids call clickbait, right? It's just as a marketing scheme. And it's a marketing scheme or a marketing scam. Everything's the greatest this, the greatest that. However, and especially if you come to Chabad, it's always, today is the greatest day and you need to come today, and tomorrow is the greatest day and you need to come tomorrow, and the day after that is even greater than all the days before. In fact, I think we mentioned this, but if you look at the Rebbe's teachings, whenever holiday the Rebbe was speaking about, it was the greatest holiday. Pesach, there's nothing like Pesach. And when it came to Purim, there's nothing like Purim. And when it came to Hanukkah, right, every day was the greatest holiday. So someone wanted to ask the Rebbe, how could it be? And I'm not going to repeat the joke we say every week, because we say it every week, so there's no need to repeat it about them both being right? So I see not everyone's familiar. One guy comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, and the rabbi says, you're right. Another guy says, but Rabbi, he did this to me. And the rabbi says, you're also right. So the wife says, how could they both be right? And the rabbi says, you're also right. So, someone once asked the Rebbe, how could every holiday be the greatest holiday? And the Rebbe said, it's very simple. When I'm talking on Pesach, only Pesach exists. It's not like in 6 months it's going to be Sukkot. You need to live in the moment. There's only right now, this very moment. And this very moment, Pesach is the greatest holiday. When I get to the next day, whether it's when I get to Shavuos, 7 weeks later, then only Shavuos exists in my world. The Rebbe said a story actually about his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, that he one time walked into his office, his study, and he was about to board a train. He was about to board a train in a few minutes. Now, most times, right before you take off for a trip, right before you board a train, running this, that. And he was studying, or whatever he was doing, writing, studying, as if, he was not going anywhere. So, and then 5 minutes later, right before he had to go to the train, he got up, and so the Rebbe asked him, what's the secret? What's the secret to that? So he said, it's something called, in Hebrew, hatzlacha bizman, to have success in time. What does that mean? That money, for example, right, you could give two people the same $10. One guy knows how to make it into 1,000, and one guy will waste it in, who knows what. So money, you could grow, you could lose. But time seemingly is the same time. You can't multiply your time, you can't. However, what it means to be successful in time is that this second is totally dedicated to this second. I'm not overloading this second and this moment with future moments and past moments. I'm not overloading the present with all different sorts of distractions of what's going to be. So this is obviously an extreme level to be in the very, very present. But that's what the Friedrich was saying. So the previous Rebbe says that, the train is, I need to go to the train in 2 minutes. So these 2 minutes, I'm right over here. Either way, so that's why the Rebbe said whatever holiday he's speaking about is the greatest holiday. However, the holiday we're going to speak about today is truly the greatest holiday, and that's not me saying that. That is the Talmud saying that. The last round, please, if you want to. A.
Okay. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said, there are no days as joyous for the Jewish people as the 15th of Av and as Yom Kippur. As one of them, the daughters of Jerusalem would go out in white clothes, which each woman borrowed from another. Why were they borrowed? They did this so as not to embarrass one who did not have her own white garments. All the garments that the women borrowed require immersion, as those who previously wore them might have been ritually impure. And the daughters of Jerusalem would go out and dance in the vineyards. And what would they say? Young man, please lift your eyes and see what you choose for yourself for a wife. Do not set your eyes towards beauty, but set your eyes towards a good family. As the verse states, grace is deceitful and beauty is vain. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised.
Thank you. We should have asked you to read in earlier weeks. You got the whole cadence, and you should be giving the classes. That was great. I love that. Either way, so this is a quote from the Mishnah, a direct quote from the Talmud, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, one of the great rabbis of the Talmud, he says that there was never such a great holiday like Yom Kippur and the 15th day of Av. Now, there's a lot of things going on. Who ever heard of the 15th day of Av? What holiday is on the 15th day of Av?
Well, we know the equivalent Goyish holiday.
Valentine's Day.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll get to that. That's what this description may have implied, but this is far from Valentine's Day. However, the question is, why on the 15th day of Av are they going out and dancing? So, Yom Kippur is a big holiday. Okay, it's not typically known as the greatest holiday, but it's maybe the holiest day. But what's this 15th day of Av business? Number one, what's the 15th day of Av business? What is the connection between the 15th day of Av and Yom Kippur? Right? Well, we got to know the answer to the first question to get to the answer to the second question. And thirdly, what is this business of matchmaking in the fields, right? The Talmud says that all the women would go out and they would dance in the fields, and everyone would borrow clothes. Why? Because if everyone wore the clothes that they had, then it wouldn't be nice. There would be the rich women who could afford nice clothes, there would be the poor women. So even rich women would have to borrow clothes, so then it wasn't embarrassing. Everyone borrows clothes on this day, and everyone goes out in white clothes, and they dance, and the prospective bachelors would be sitting there, and they would find themselves a wife. Interesting system.
Maybe I think that knowing women, that the rich women would borrow from the poorest woman in the city, she'd probably borrow from one of her rich friends. Right?
So, funnily enough, there actually is, believe it or not, there actually is an argument in the Talmud about that. An argument between the two Talmuds, between the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud. Would you borrow up or borrow down? Borrow up or borrow down? The Babylonian Talmud says that you borrow down, meaning part of the protocol was not just you had to borrow, you had to borrow down. You had to borrow from the person who has less than you. The Jerusalem Talmud says no, you borrow up. You borrow from the person who has more than you. What's the difference? Well, the Rebbe has such incredible depth into this argument. I was actually going to teach it today, but I figured maybe another time. Well, there's a lot more to get to before that. But that's an interesting question. The point is that everything is discussed. Everything is discussed.
So the woman who lives in a mansion with a pool borrows from her friend with a mansion without a pool.
Pretty much. No, there the Talmud gives an example. It would be the daughter. The highest level is the princess. She's the daughter of the queen, of the king, right? The next level is the daughter of the Kohen Gadol. So the argument is, does the daughter of the Kohen Gadol borrow from the king, or does vice versa? Okay, but that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. What is the idea of going out in the fields? And they would say, don't look at beauty. Beauty is vain. Look at the God-fearing woman, like we say on Friday night, right? Sheker achein vehevel hayefi. Beauty is vain. And this is from the Mishnah. We learned in the last series that the Talmud explains the Mishnah and expounds upon it. And what actually the Talmud says, I didn't put on the page, unfortunately, but no, there was different women would say different things. The women that came from good stock, they had a family lineage, would say, young man, choose yourself a good family, right? The women that were well-to-do would say, young man, get yourself established, financially. The women that were beautiful would comment on their beauty. And then the women that had none of them, would say, take a wife for the sake of heaven, not for any of these vain reasons like money or status or beauty, etc., etc. I feel like there's a bunch of good jokes floating here, but.
The way she looks, and the way she sees, and the way he looks. It's
Oh, that reminds me of this joke. There was one time a matchmaker sets up this guy on a date. And he says this woman, she comes from a great family, and she's beautiful, and she's this and that. And he goes through all her qualities, right? And she speaks so beautifully. Either way, the guy goes on a date, and the woman has a terrible stutter. She could barely get a word out. So he goes back to the matchmaker after they're furious. Right? You set me up with this woman, you say she's beautiful, you say this. You don't tell me you told me she speaks beautifully, she has a stutter. The matchmaker says, listen, everything else I said was true. So one detail, I got one detail wrong. Everything else I said was, which reminds me of the other joke they say. No one here has a stutter, right? That would be a bad thing to joke about. Everyone here speaks wonderfully. This back in the day, the custom was that the rich man of the city wanted a son-in-law, so he would come to the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the yeshiva, and he would knock on the door and say, give me your greatest student for my daughter. And many matches happen like this. So they say this, the joke goes that this fellow comes to the rabbi and says, give me your greatest student for my daughter. So the rabbi says, sure, I have the student, he's a genius, he's kind, he just has one problem. He has a stutter. So the guy's like, you know what? If he's really a Torah scholar and God-fearing and all these things, I'll take him. Okay, so the rabbi sends off his student and he says, go to the rich man's house, knock on the door, he wants to meet you, gives him the address. So the student knocks on the door and the rich man opens up and he says, hello, what's your name? Shlomo. So the rich man says, get out of here, and he sends him home. And the student is humiliated. So the rabbi goes over to the rich man. I don't understand. I told you my student has a stutter. Why do you get upset? He's like, yeah, but you said he's brilliant. He should have done all the ecking and becking before. And when he's about to say his name, he should have knocked on the door. Why did he knock on the door and then start? Either way, that's a terrible joke. But
in Judaism, someone with a stutter should be looked up on because Moses had stutter.
Exactly.
Right? That became such a great leader.
The greatest rabbi had a stutter. I don't know how we got into these jokes of stuttering. Let's get back to the point. Yes, that's a good point. The greatest Jew had a stutter. Okay, so the question is, why is the 15th of Av such a special day? Whoever heard of the 15th of Av, it's not like the 15th of Nisan, which is Pesach. It's not like the 15th of Tishrei, which is Sukkot. So let us see in B. We'll each read one. The Talmud gives 6 different reasons, right? You never heard of this day? The Talmud gives 6 different reasons why it was a great day. Sarah, if you could start with us with the beginning and number 1.
Should I start with
B and number 1, yeah.
Granted, Yom Kippur is a day of joy because it has the elements of pardon and forgiveness, and moreover, it is the day on which the last pair of tablets were given. However, what is the special joy of 15th of Av? Rabbi said that Yisroel said this was the day on which the members of different tribes were permitted to enter one another's tribe by intermarriage.
Okay, so each one needs quite a bit of explanation, so we'll go one by one. So the Talmud is saying that Yom Kippur is a great day because it's the day of forgiveness. And as well, it's the day that Moshe came down the mountain with the second set of luchos, second set of tablets, right? Obviously, he came down with the first ones 40 days after the giving of the Torah on Shavuos. And we served the golden calf, so he broke them, so he went back up. And he prayed and he came down on Yom Kippur with the second set of luchos. So Yom Kippur is a big day. The question is, what is the 15th day of Av? So number 1, the day on which members of different tribes were permitted to enter one another's tribe. What does that mean? So the Torah says a very, very interesting episode where if a person passes away, when he passes away, his inheritance goes to his sons. So the Torah says a long story that there was a family that only had daughters. So they came to Moshe and they said, what about us? So Moshe said, that's a good question. Let me ask God. So Moshe asked God, and God says, yeah, it goes to the daughters. If there's no sons, daughters are in the place of sons. So then the story continues much later in the Torah that this was daughters of the tribe of Yosef. That the tribe of Yosef came and said, what's going to happen? They're going to marry men. Now you're allowed to marry from tribe to tribe. If it's a Jew, there's no problem. So they're going to marry other men. And the child goes according to the man. So if your husband is from the tribe of Yehuda, your son is the tribe of Yehuda, and then slowly, our real estate is going to be pulled away from us because our inheritance is going to go to these women who didn't have any brothers, and it's going to go to their husbands and sons. So Moshe said, oh, that's a good question as well, like our rabbi joke. And he asked God what to do, and Hashem says, each tribe could only marry their own tribe. So for a couple generations, about maybe 100 or so years, I don't know the exact amount of time, so don't quote me on that, even though not only marrying Jewish, but specifically each tribe only married their own tribe. Each tribe only married their own tribe. Now, there's a lot to choose from. If you read in the Torah, each one of the 12 tribes had between 30 to 70,000 people, right? And this is the generation in the desert. Each generation got more and more. But the first generation, they were only allowed to marry within the tribe. And then, at a certain point, the tribes got big enough. There was no worry of losing the portion of land. The 15th day of Av, the ban was lifted. All the tribes could intermarry. You could marry from tribe to tribe. Okay, that is number one. Raymond, do you want to read us number two? We're on B, number two.
Rav Yosef said that Rav Nachman said the 15th of Av was the day on which the tribe of Benjamin was permitted to enter the congregation of the Jewish people.
Thank you. So what is that talking about? So there is a very, very lengthy story, and which is really quite terrible, really even worse than my off-color jokes today. And the story in very short goes like this. There was a woman, unfortunate woman, who was out late at night and was terribly violated by a gang of hoodlums, however you say it, right? No goodniks. Terribly violated to the point that the next day she died. This was in the tribe of Binyamin. Just what are we talking about? We're talking about Israel before the temple times. So we're talking about a couple hundred years into the land of Israel, before the kings, so there was no real central power. It was just each tribe would govern themselves. And this story happens in the tribe of Benjamin. And whoever was the leader of that town, of that tribe of Benjamin, of that section, did not really take these rapists and murderers to task. It sort of just slid under the rug, right? History repeats itself, where people get away with terrible things. So, long story short, I'm not getting into all the details. It only gets much, much worse from here. As you know, can't get any worse. It could get a lot worse, right? So what happened was that all of the 11 tribes took up arms against Benjamin. There was a Jewish civil war. Now the problem is that the tribes didn't ask Hashem before going to war. They didn't ask God. They were just infuriated at this injustice that they waged war, but because they didn't ask Hashem's guidance, so there was terrible casualties on both ends, even though it was 10-1. Yet, first the tribes of the Jewish people, the 10 tribes, lost terrible casualties, but ultimately Binyamin was in the wrong, and they were almost completely wiped out. And there was about 500 of all of the Benjaminites left in the Jewish people. 500 or so, give or take. I don't remember the exact number. The Torah says an exact number. 600?
Yeah.
Could be. Thank you. Sarah's pulling out these numbers. I think she's right, actually. I think it was 600, more than 500. But, which reminds me of a great joke, but we actually have to study something today. So what happened was, so they let them be, but they said, we are not letting our daughters go to these men. We're not letting our daughters go to these men. We don't want to have anything. We won't kill them, but basically we'll leave them to their own devices. And then, as well, on the 15th of Av, some period of time later, I don't know either how long, only a couple of years, the Jewish people said, if we cut them off, they're not going to survive. 500 men are not going to survive. We need to bring them back in. And on the 15th day of Av, the ban was lifted, and the tribe of Benjamin was allowed to re-enter the Jewish people, and ultimately reconstituted. That is number 2. Let us see number 3. Darryl, please.
Rabbi Baruch Hana said that Rabbi Yochanan said,
15th day of Av was the day on which the deaths of the Jews in the wilderness ceased.
Okay, so another story. What is going on over here? So we all know the story that God decreed that the generation of the desert will not go into the land of Israel. Why? Because they didn't want to go into Israel. They sinned with the story of the spies and they cried. Everyone knows that story. So God says, you're not going to go into the land of Israel. The Jewish people were in the desert for 40 years. And to be a Jewish man starts when you're 13. But in the desert, to be part of the army, to be enlisted, it was from 20 years old. So the decree to die in the desert was anyone from 20 and up, and they died at age 60. So the youngest one had 40 years in the desert and died at age 60. Everyone died at age 60. What would happen? So last week was the 9th of Av, and last Sunday we studied about the 9th of Av. And the first calamity which happened on the 9th of Av, before the destruction, before the Oslo Accords, which happened on the 9th of Av, and before the First World War, and before the Spanish Inquisition, and before the Second Temple was destroyed, and before the First Temple was destroyed, the first calamity was the spies returned on the 9th of Av. The night in which the Jewish people said, we don't want to go into Israel, was the 9th of Av. So what would happen? Every year, this is not written in the Torah, the Talmud relates, every year, on the 9th of Av, anyone who turned 60 that year would go into their graves. They would dig a grave because they knew they were going to die that year on the 9th of Av. And they knew they were going to die. So, at least you could say goodbye. It's an interesting concept. Normally, you don't really get to choose your own time unless, God forbid, you take your life. But they knew they were going to die. So they dug a grave and they said goodbye and they went to sleep and that was that. So what happened was on the 40th year, they didn't know that it was over. I guess they didn't know how to count the 40 years. It wasn't clear that it was 40 years. So everyone gets into the graves. And the next morning they wake up and they turn like, I thought I'm in heaven. Why are you here? Right? There was a big Chabad rabbi. We actually didn't get to meet him. He passed away only a couple years before. I was alive before I entered into yeshiva, but all my brothers knew him. And he was a very big rabbi, but very, very light-spirited. And he lived till like 100 and something. Not 110, somewhere between 100 and 110. He lived a very, very... And his name was Mendel Merazov, a great, very central figure in Chabad. And before, I remember my brother told me, my brother used to spend time with him, and my brother told me that before he passed, he started saying that, I'm starting to see my friends, all my friends in the world to come, and they're saying, Mendel, we need someone to come for praying, someone to, make it lively here, someone to lead the Shabbos table. So he's like, I don't understand. So many rabbis, from our friends have already passed. Why do you need me? He's like, no, they're all in heaven. We need someone with us down here. Either way, so he was joking. I'm sure he's in heaven and having what we call a lichtike Gan Eden. So the point is, so they woke up the next morning and they're like, this is heaven. This looks just like, and they realize they're still alive.
Rabbi, is it okay to know the date of your death? Is it appropriate?
How would we know that?
Because they see actually that every 15th of Av, people die.
Oh, in those days?
Yeah.
Oh, for them they knew, but we can't know. We can't know. It's a wonderful thing, in fact. King David asks in Tehillim, asks in Psalms, that in chapter 39, King David asks, God, tell me the day I'm going to die. He wanted to know the day of his death. Right? Because this way you could know, you could prepare, but that's not the way the world works, for good reason.
I have a side note. So in both 2 and 3, it is talked about the Jews, but when we talk about those tribes, this is before they were Jews, because the Jews are the people of Judah. That survived, so it's the Israelites.
Okay, that's true. That's true. That's a good correction. The Israelites are not the Jews, but they were Jewish people. So what? What are we saying? Oh, so they woke up the next morning, and they were still alive. So, but then they didn't have a calendar, right, like we have nowadays, they would go by the new moon. So they thought maybe we miscalculated the new month, right? And we thought it was the 9th of Av, but really maybe the 9th of Av is tonight. So what did they do? They went again to sleep again in their graves. And pretty... either way, what they didn't teach you in Hebrew school. So, and again and again and again, and they thought and then what happened on the 15th of Av, the 15th of every month, the moon is full, right? Until it's full, you're maybe not sure, but once it's full, like this is definitely not the 9th of Av. And the 15th of Av, they realized, that's it. There's no more dying in the desert, we're going into Israel. So the 15th of Av was the day that they realized that terrible decree, the first decree against the Jewish people that everyone should die on the 15th of, on the 9th of the month, was over. That is number 3. Let us see number 4. Lisa, you're up.
Mullah said, the 15th of Av was the day on which King Hoshea, son of Elah, canceled the guards that Jeroboam, son of Negat, placed on the roads so that the Jews would not ascend to Jerusalem for the pilgrim festival.
So this is a whole nother story, and with all these stories, but after there was King David, he was not really the first king, there was Shaul, King David, he was really the first of the line of the Davidic line. Then comes his son, which is Solomon, thank you, Shlomo. And then comes Shlomo's son, Rechavam. Now, King David and King Shlomo are giants, right? Everyone knows King David and King Shlomo. However, already the third generation Rechavam was not made of such stellar material as his father and grandfather. And he became king when he was a young man. And he asks, he wanted to know whether he should raise the tax rate or lower the tax rate. So his father's advisors, his older council said, don't raise the tax rates. They're high enough already, don't raise the tax rates. And his friend says, nah, these people are just lazy, they could work harder and make more and they could raise the tax rates. And he raised the tax rates and the people were in arms, and it led to eventually 10 out of 12 tribes breaking off and starting their own kingdom, called the Kingdom of Israel, led by Yerevam. Now, that is just the physical manifestation. It was obviously preordained from heaven. It was a decree, etc., etc. And for the next 300 years, there was 2 kingdoms in Israel, in the tiny space in Israel, right? Like the man on the island with 2 synagogues. There was 2 kingdoms in Israel, and there was even wars between them, and it was a whole very long, bloody history. Sometimes they got along, sometimes they didn't. Ultimately, the 10 tribes were lost. They were sent to exile before. Everyone around the table here is either a Cohen, or from the tribe of Cohen and Levite, that's the same tribe, like Darrell, or from the tribe of Yehuda, or from the tribe of Benjamin. Only Yehuda was King David. King David and his family, they stayed with their tribe. And Benjamin was also very, very close. They were geographically lived in the same place. So 2 tribes and the Levites. So everyone nowadays pretty much is really just from these 2 tribes. It's an argument in the Talmud, will the 10 lost tribes come back? Well, we believe that when Mashiach comes, we'll bring them back wherever they are. So what happened is that this break-off kingdom starts. The problem was there's a mitzvah 3 times a year to go to the Beis HaMikdash. 3 times a year you need to go to the temple for Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuos. So the king of the 10 tribes realized, if 3 times a year all of my citizens are going to the temple, which is in the other kingdom, the kingdom of Yehuda, the kingdom of the house of David, right? Then they're going to clearly see that we're a break-off, we're second class, we're second tier. That's not going to last. So he did something terrible, this first king. And first of all, he blocked off. He made a border, built a wall along the border, so to speak. And he made his own temple with idols. And he said 3 times a year, you're going to come worship these idols. And very quickly, all the 10 tribes became idol worshippers for hundreds of years, and that's why they were lost. And this king who did this actually doesn't have a portion of the world to come, and he'll never come back. That's what's written. either way, so one of his descendants, after many, many hundreds of years of this divide of no going to, of the 10 tribes not going to the Beis HaMikdash, on the 15th of Av, his great-great-great-great-grandson, Hoshea, the son of Elah, took the block, took off the blocks, the wall, what do you call it? Blockish is a better word for it, but the roadblocks, he took away the roadblocks, and everyone was allowed to go to the temple. Thank you. Okay, so fourth reason. All these reasons are really seemingly random pieces of Jewish history. They're interesting, fascinating, at least to me. I hope to you too. Let us see number 5, Aaron.
Rabbi said there was additional salvation on this day, as it was the day that the slain of Beitar were brought to burial several years after the battle at Beitar.
Thank you. Right, so this is easier to understand. Bar Kochba led a revolt after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, and about 70 years afterwards, and he was a mighty warrior, and he almost vanquished the entire Roman army, but he sinned and he got haughty, and he was destined to lose, and his last hold-up, his last fort was in a place called Beitar, and ultimately, on the 9th of Av, actually, they were all killed on one day. And to add, not insult to injury, but worse upon worse, not only were they all killed, but the Romans did not let anyone go into the city to bury them for, I believe, 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. Sarah, do you have the right date again? Maybe not this time. Anyway, 7 years. 7 years they had to, the bodies sat there. Can you imagine 7 years? In fact, it says that so much blood flowed from the murder of Beitar that it fertilized all the surrounding areas for years to come. Either way, on the 15th day of Av, I believe 7 years later, maybe I'm wrong, but a couple years later, Romans finally allowed them to be buried, and the miracle was that the bodies were intact and they had not rotted. Normally a body rots very quickly. 7 years they were intact, and on the 15th day of Av, they were allowed to bury them. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. Number 6 is a whole another piece of Talmud, and we still have a whole second page. Either way, point is, the Rabbi said that from the 15th day of Av, the nights get longer, so we're going to be here all day and all night. Here's the idea. So here the Talmud says that the 15th day of Av is the greatest holiday. The greatest holiday. If you look back at number 8, there was no days as joyous as the 15th day of Av and as Yom Kippur, the very first line. So the 15th day of Av is the greatest holiday. And why? So a bunch of fascinating things happened, all seemingly random occurrences all throughout Jewish history. The tribes were allowed to intermarry. The tribe of Benjamin was welcomed into the fold. They stopped dying in the desert. They opened up the roadblocks that everyone could go to the Beis HaMikdash, and the people of Beitar were brought to burial. So the question is, what is going on, and why is it such a great holiday, and why are they dancing in the fields? So let us quickly see number C. Alex, I think we're up to you.
Alas, lonely sits the city once great with people. She that was great among nations is become like a widow.
Thank you. This is the very, very beginning of Eicha, Lamentations. We just read on the 9th of Av that the once great city has become like a widow. And the key point I forgot to put in, but the Talmud says, what does it mean, like a widow? The city has become widowed. The Talmud says, like a widow, because God didn't truly divorce us. He's away on an extended leave. And even that, he's not really away, but it's like a widow. The Torah says that we have become like a widow. What is the idea? So we spoke last week, that the key description, and here's where the Kabbalah comes in. Every class is on Kabbalah. So the key, not description, or the key expression of our relationship with Hashem is the bond of a husband and wife. There's lots of different sorts of relationships we spoke last week. There's father-son, king-servant, shepherd, sheep, many, many different ways we interact with Hashem. But the number one is husband and wife. God is the husband and we are his wife. This state of exile, God destroying the Beis HaMikdash and sending us in exile, is like a divorce. It's like a divorce. That's what we studied last week, and the Torah says this in many, many places, that God sending us away is like kicking us out of the home. Right? You get divorced and the woman leaves the home. So that is the ninth of. That is the ninth of. What's important, the key is that Chassidus teaches is that God never truly divorced us. God never truly divorced us. I should have printed out. The Yeshaya, the Navi, says as well that God tells Jewish people, where's the bill of divorce? Where have I ever divorced you? Right, that you say that I divorced you. God never leaves us alone.
Is the Ten Commandments like a ketubah?
Exactly, very good. That's what we learned that a couple weeks ago, right? That the breaking the, oh no, that wasn't here. That was in a different class. The Ten Commandments are the ketubah, very good. That's the marriage document. The Torah, more generally, the Torah is the marriage document. There's a lot to say about that, but the Torah is the marriage document. So, Tisha B'Av is the ultimate, if it's not a divorce, it's a breakup. It's like a divorce. So therefore, right after Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av was last Thursday. The 15th of Av is 6 days after that. That will be this Wednesday. This Wednesday, the 15th of Av. The 15th of Av is the holiday celebrating, this is how Chassidus explains it, celebrating that Hashem never truly divorced us. Hashem never truly divorced us. And that one idea, which you don't see in the Talmud, you see this story, that story, but like we said many times, the idea of Chassidus, the idea of Kabbalah, is to see what's the underlying message, what is going on between the scenes. And what's going on is the 15th of Av celebrates the fact that we're never truly alone. And Hashem never truly divorced us. We're like a widow because in the state that we're in, but never truly divorced us. And that explains everything. It explains, and we'll see in a second, what is the connection to Yom Kippur, right? We said it's a pretty random day. Why are they going out and dancing in the fields? And the obvious question is, why are these 5 random events caused to have the greatest holiday? They're so random. The tribes, we don't need to repeat them, right? They're on the page. But it's all one idea. What is the idea? The idea is as follows. Yom Kippur, like we said, Aaron said that the tablets are, the Ten Commandments are the marriage document. Moshe broke the marriage document, right? He broke the tablets. Yom Kippur is when he came down with the second set of tablets. So what does Yom Kippur represent? Not just the day of forgiveness, but more so Yom Kippur is the day when God remarried us, when God took us back in. And as well, that is the idea of the 15th of Av. After the 9th of Av.
Vows, as they say.
Renewed his vow. Yeah, sort of. The 15th of Av is as well the same idea where Hashem takes us back in. Okay, so Yom Kippur, you could see the connection to Hashem taking us back in because it's the day that He gave us the second set of tablets, and it's the day that He said you're forgiven. But what does the 15th day of Av, what do all these things have to do with Hashem taking us back in? So the question is, if you could try to see between the 5 that we read, what is the common thread in all these 5? They seem to be all completely random. What is the common thread in these 5, any common denominators, any common clues?
Securing of bad to good.
Bad to good, true. But that is one something more specific, a specific aspect of the good. All the holidays are about something bad transformed to good. That's true, that's correct.
The day of the week, something like
Oh,
that.
that's similar to what Alex said. What the Rebbe explains is the key here is Jewish unity. Jewish unity. Number 1, right? The tribes can marry. Why is that such a big deal? Right? The tribes can marry each other. You can find plenty of nice wives in your own tribe. It's Jewish unity. There's not 12 different tribes, it's one tribe. Number 2, of course, the tribe of Benjamin, they were ostracized, they were excommunicated, and now they're welcomed back into the fold. Number 3, right? The people in the desert, they were barred, right? They were disconnected from the land of Israel, right? They were disconnected. On the 15th day of Av, they realized, no, the Jewish people are going to unite with the land of Israel. And 4, of course, 4 is that there was the unity between the two kingdoms, right? And the 5th is even after death. Okay, the idea is Jewish unity. Why is all the happenings of the 15th of Jewish unity? Because the key to our unity with God, the key to our reunion, our renewing of vows, so to speak, with Hashem, is if we do it between each other. How are you going to make up with Hashem? You can speak to Hashem. Hashem tells us, you want to know how to make up with me? Make up with the guy you can't stand. The guy right next door. Right? True Jewish unity is what draws Hashem's unity with us. So let's see 2 great sources for that. We'll go back the other way. So Aaron, if you could read for us actually number E. Actually, no, D. We'll go in order. D.
The basis and the root of the entire Torah are to bring down the light of the Ein Sof, bless its deed, upon the union of Israel, as we explained later, to become one into one. This is impossible if there is this union with the souls of the Holy One, blessed is He, is not going to a place, as we pray, bless us, our Father, all of us, as one with the light of the countenance.
Thank you. This is from Tanya, and there's a lot to unpack here, but we're already on overtime. But briefly, the Tanya says here that the purpose of the entire Torah is to draw godliness down into the world. But that is only possible when there's unity amongst the Jewish people. Why? Because as the Zohar says, the quote from the Zohar, that God does not dwell in an imperfect place. Wherever there's strife, wherever there's conflict, wherever there's disagreement, God is not present there. God is not present in a place. God fills the entire world. Right? The famous Rabbi Mendel of Kutsk, he one time asked his students, where is God? He said, where is God? God is everywhere. He said, no, God is wherever you let him in. Right? And where is God not let in? We're in a place of argument and confrontation. And in fact, Lisa, if I could ask you to finish us off with number E.
Okay. However, considering that the people during the Second Temple period were engaged in Torah study, observance of mitzvah, and the acts of kindness, and that they did not perform the sinful acts that were performed in the First Temple, why was the Second Temple destroyed? It was destroyed due to the fact that there was a baseless hatred during that period. This comes to teach you that the sin of wanton hatred is equivalent to the 3 severe transgressions: idol worship, forbidden relations, and bloodshed.
Thank you. So this is only a partial quote, but the Talmud before is saying that in the First Temple period, there was terrible sins. Idolatry, murder, adultery. But the Talmud says, and that's why the First Temple was destroyed. But the Second Temple, no, they were righteous people and they studied Torah, in fact. They were like good people. So why was the temple destroyed? Says the Talmud, because of baseless hatred. What is baseless hatred? Baseless hatred is not that there's no reason, but the hatred comes before the reason. You just can't stand the guy. And then everything about them bothers you. This bothers you and that bothers you. Just, hatred is a strong word, but it means it's just, you can't stand someone. They just bother you. They bother you. And that is why the temple was destroyed. And the Talmud says, if so, right? If so, it sees that the baseless hatred is as negative as the worst sins. The Rebbe would always say that if the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of baseless hatred, it will be rebuilt because of baseless love. Not the friends that you love for a reason, not the people to love your fellow Jew just because. And that is the holiday of the 15th of Av, where we celebrate all these, not small, but all these instances of the Jewish people uniting. Why? Because when we unite, when we are disunified, if that's a word, when we're disconnected, then the temple is destroyed. And what does that mean? That Hashem does not rest with us, like we saw in D from Tanya. When we're unified, when we're together as one, that is the reconnection and reconnecting of us with Hashem. So that is why, getting back to what we started from the beginning, on the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur, they would go out and make marriages, right? Because it's all the same idea, symbolizing the marriage between us and Hashem, and as well that Hashem rests in us when there's harmony and love between one Jew and another Jew. So that is why the 15th of Av, the seemingly, random date and inconspicuous date, is, the Talmud says, the greatest holiday, because it's the day of Jewish unity. It's the day which highlights Jewish unity and pushes us towards Jewish unity and strengthens Jewish unity, which will ultimately bring about the reunion of us with Hashem, when Hashem will rebuild the third Beis Hamikdash already today. So that is the great B'mher B'yameinu.
Does Chabad and the Orthodoxy Jews not celebrate it as much as the love holiday? Because in Israel,
so that
is what it is. No, none of the others are even considered it. People have parties. And
right. So that's unfortunately, like a lot of things, a corruption of the true idea. Yes, it said they would go out, but the ideas of Jewish unity and reconnection with Hashem, for it to become a day of other sort of stuff, is get your wife flowers. That's a good idea. Write someone a card. But past that, anything past that is a bit of a deviation, shall we say? Slight deviation from the point. But the point is Jewish unity, not to speak bad about all Jews. All Jews celebrate Tu B'Av, this one in that way, this one in another way. The Rebbe one time said that on holidays you don't say Tachnun, right? Especially you don't say the Tachnun prayer, part of davening. So the Rebbe said all Jews on holidays don't say Tachnun. Some Jews don't say Tachnun because they don't pray ever. And some Jews don't say Tachnun because they know it's a holiday. But all Jews are celebrating so that's another way of looking at Okay, L'chaim, my friends, good to see everyone. Hopefully we'll see everyone plus next week for a very new and exciting series, which will, to be determined.